To Florida now, where a federal investigation into Congressman Matt Gaetz and his alleged sex crimes is picking up steam. We're learning new details about the 2018 trip that he took to the Bahamas, which has become central to the probe. A report from the Associated Press says investigators are also now looking into whether Gaetz and his associates on that trip had mutual interests in the medical marijuana sector and whether that influenced any legislation the Republican may have sponsored. Gaetz, who's accused of having an inappropriate sexual relationship with an underage girl, strongly maintains he did nothing wrong. Marc Caputo is a reporter for Politico and joins us now to dig more into this. So, Marc, who were the people involved in this trip, and why is this trip so important?
We don't know everyone who was on the trip, but we do know Matt Gaetz had joined. There was Dr. Jason Pirozzolo, who is involved in medical marijuana. He's a hand surgeon in the Orlando area. Halsey Beshears, at the time, was a state representative and went on to become the kind of a secretary under Ron DeSantis. Also on the trip were at least at least four women, some of whom might have joined. I'm carefully choosing my words here because we're talking about sex now. They joined the trip after having met some of the men on the Seeking Arrangement website for sugar daddies. And the federal government is examining this portion of the trip to see whether these women were brought there for purposes of engaging in prostitution. If they were, it would be a violation of what's called the Mann Act, which prohibits transporting someone across state lines in order to engage in prostitution. Now, I need to be clear about this. Matt Gaetz has denied all wrongdoing. Halsey Beshears is not commenting, nor is Jason Pirozzolo. Beshears, when he flew back from the Bahamas to Florida on one of his planes, he has a private plane, he's a pilot, he had at least three young women with him, or at least two young women with him, and they looked so young that customs agents briefly stopped him because they thought it looked a little suspicious. And it turns out they were of age. And the other women on the trip were of age as well, at least one of the women has told us. Nevertheless, this has become an object of study or focus for the federal government. There's also some related kind of mission creep or expansion of the investigation to see whether or not there was sort of a pay-to-play scheme involving Matt Gaetz over medical marijuana legislation that Pirozzolo was interested in, and when Gaetz was in the legislature, Halsey Beshears had benefited from when he also was in the state house. Understand that that's part of this kind of wider portion of the investigation that the federal government is looking at. And almost all of the investigation basically traces back to one man. That's Joel Greenberg, who is the former Seminole County tax collector. Seminole County is in the Orlando area, who was busted on a host of charges. He faces a 33-count indictment for a variety of crimes. And in order to lighten his looming sentence, he is looking at least 12 years in prison. He's been trying to essentially deliver up Matt Gaetz. Prosecutors do like to convict corrupt congressman. I'm not calling Matt Gaetz a corrupt congressman, but they're examining him to see if he is. And if he is, and they think they can make a charge stick, and Greenberg is helping them, we can expect Matt Gaetz will be charged. Now, will Matt Gaetz be charged? I don't know. I don't have access to all of the information that they're looking at.
But, Marc, what is his future in Congress? Because, as you pointed out, Mr. Greenberg has provided investigators with lots of information. In fact, there was a letter that was recently leaked, and based on that letter, Congressman Ted Lieu of California has called for Gaetz to at least be removed from the House Judiciary Committee. What are you hearing from Kevin McCarthy about Mr. Gaetz' future, at least on that committee? Maybe not Congress, because he was voted in by the people and he denies all these charges. But while this investigation is ongoing, are you hearing that Kevin McCarthy is going to do anything at all?
Oh, no. Kevin McCarthy knows that Matt Gaetz is a favorite of Donald Trump. Matt Gaetz has not been criminally charged. Removing members of Congress from various committees and the like is a pretty extreme step that is usually reserved for people who get again, criminally charged and the like. I would like to point out that Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey was accused of various sex-related crimes. He was never ultimately charged with that. He was charged in a wide-ranging corruption scheme. though he was from New Jersey, that doctor was from Florida, incidentally, that he was allegedly involved in corrupt deals with. He was never removed from his committees. And Menendez went on to beat the charges. That is, he was found not guilty. But that was in a kind of a former era. I would like to point out that one of the really corrosive things that President Trump had ushered in a kind of a very open way was this lock her up and lock him up mentality that we're now seeing in both parties, where all it takes is one person to be accused, and all of a sudden everyone's saying lock him up. Well, generally you got to get charged first, and then you got to get convicted in order to get locked up. And so until someone is criminally charged, I think until Gaetz is criminally charged, I don't expect to see any action on behalf of the Republican caucus in the House. Now, what does the Democratic caucus do? Because Democrats control the U.S. House, and Ted Lieu is rather influential. That's going to be something to watch. Incidentally, Matt Gaetz is saying he's going about kind of his business as usual, and he's going to be touring the country with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was removed from her committees because she espoused a variety of false, baseless, wild conspiracy theories. However, those conspiracy theories and those false statements were essentially made before she was elected to Congress. And that was a pretty extraordinary vote by the House Democrats to strip her, from her committee assignments. Now, that happened in the wake and in the heat of the January 6th Capitol riots. Nevertheless, it did set a precedent, and now we're in this new era of politics where it can take a bunch of false statements you might have made in the past before you were elected, or perhaps just accusations against you without criminal charges to get people to start wanting you to be removed from your committee assignments or from your seat.
Let's switch it up a little bit. I want to ask you about some other politics happening in Florida. What can you tell us about who is planning to run against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in 2022?
Charlie Crist, the former governor, current congressman from the Tampa area, from St. Petersburg. On Saturday, he let his supporters know he was going to have a big announcement on Tuesday. That big announcement is that Charlie Crist is going to be running against Ron DeSantis. It'd be Charlie Crist's third bid for office. He was governor from 2007 to 2011. He did leave office to run for Senate unsuccessfully. Marco Rubio beat him. Crist then made a comeback bid in 2014 to try to beat then-incumbent Governor Rick Scott, narrowly lost by a point. Now he's back. The other likely candidate is Nikki Fried. She's the only statewide elected Democrat in Florida. She's the agriculture commissioner. For quite some time, she's been laying the groundwork to run for office. But the big candidate, or potential candidate looming all over this, is Val Demings. She is the Orlando congresswoman who was on the short list to be the vice presidential running mate of Joe Biden. And now she is really examining running for governor. A lot of people are encouraging her. She's developing a lot of buzz in Democratic circles. So, that's starting to look a little more likely than unlikely. But, nothing's final until they say the word go.
All right. Marc Caputo, always great to have you, my friend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.